So for our studio audience, I want to say welcome to Black Men Speak. Thank you for joining us for another episode. I'm your host, Shauna Love, and I'm here with my brother and my co-host, Kimani Pasai. Hi, Kimani.
Hey, what's up?
And the mission of this project is to change the narrative about Black men by changing the narrator to Black men. Every episode, we invite a guest and we ask them the same question, what is hurting Black men? And that launches us into a dialogue or a conversation that covers a lot of different topics. Our guest today is Garret Phillips. Hello, Garrett.
How you doing?
We're doing good. Thanks so much for joining us today.
I appreciate it. I appreciate being here. Thanks for having me, giving me the opportunity. And
Yeah, well, you and I met and we had a wonderful conversation, and I just felt like you had a lot of value and a really interesting perspective and story to tell. For our audience, Garrett is a 34-year-old father of two from Indianapolis, and he's currently living in Austin, Texas, and working for a tech startup that just actually had its IPO, right?
Yes.
So congratulations on that.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So Garrett, you know what we're doing here, and you've had some time to kind of think about, this project and the question, and just, what that means to you in your life. So from your perspective, can you tell us what's hurting Black men?
I've had time to think about it, and I would say blame. I say us as Black men place a lot of blame on quote unquote the white man or the other people around them and their environment, when I feel like what needs to change is them as a person. You have to change the way you think. You have to change the way you present yourself. It is a belief that you attract what you put out, what you project out. So if everything that you're thinking is just a blame, then where are you going?
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. I find that especially interesting from a brother like you, who is, dark complected brother with dreadlocks, long locks. You've been growing them out for years. And when you think about in terms of how you present yourself, most brothers that I know who wore locks, and I used to be a loctician. My daughter's father had locks. My daughter had locks. I twisted up people in my family. But I know a lot of people have, especially after a certain number of years, felt that they got treated differently and perceived differently because of their locks, on top of being Black, on top of perhaps being darker complected. And then it made their life that much more difficult. So can you talk to me a little bit about what your experience has been from that standpoint?
Growing my hair has been an enlightening experience. It took time, and you learn a lot about time and you learn a lot about patience. And with my hair, it doesn't change my energy. It helps project my energy, but it doesn't change. So my hair doesn't change when people look at me, what they see. You know what I mean? It's not, oh, because he has locks, he's in the streets or he's a gangbanger. No, I project myself differently. My pants aren't sitting below my waist. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not having big baggy clothes on and gaudy jewelry, and I'm not driving around in big cars. And no, I'm not that type of person. That's the life I don't want to live. And people can tell that. When you meet a person, you can tell, you can feel their aura. You can feel the type of person and the energy that they give off. And it doesn't matter what color you are. If you give off good aura, people will pick it up.
Yeah.
Find that fascinating. There are studies. Kimani, did you want to say something?
Well, I mean, yeah, I agree with that to a certain extent. I feel like anybody who knows me, who knows me, knows I have a good energy and everything, you know what I'm saying? But I do get a lot of standoffishness with me just because of what people perceive from me. You know what I'm saying? And I do my pants, I don't do the sag below my butt and like a lot of dudes do, but I have a slight sag in my pants, you know what I'm saying? I'm definitely a hip hop head, you know what I'm saying? I have been in the streets, but I also know how to carry myself outside of that and which is in my usual, you know, as a carpenter and everything. But even then, like, there's a certain intimidation that some people get from me, just from me either being a black man or just I don't know what it is really, honestly, because anybody who gets to know me is like, yo, I was really intimidated by you at first, but then I get to know you and you're such a cool dude. You're very patient with people, you know what I'm saying? You have a lot, you're very articulate, you have a good head on my shoulder, but at the same time, I do get that perception a lot in society. And as far as, I feel you as far as we need to change our own mindset about, instead of worrying so much about who's holding us back, which is an issue I feel like needs to be addressed, but we also have to look forward and how to better ourselves. You know what I'm saying?
I believe in a sense of, like, when you say it is an issue, it is. When we talk about what's holding us back, there is legitimate issues that are holding us back.
Yes.
But I talked to Shauna before we talked about this, and I was explaining to her, I was like, I gave her the analogy of going to a casino, and you sit down at a table and you're like, I want to play blackjack. And they look at you and say, we play poker. You know what I mean? And right now it's to a point where all you can do is play poker. So you learn to play poker, you figure out the game. And next thing you know, when all the chips are sitting in front of you and ain't nobody else got nothing, you can say, I want to play blackjack now. That's life. You play the game until you're in a position to change your situation.
Yeah, definitely.
Interesting. I think you bring up a very valid point, and yet there are so many of us who either because of institutionalized racism, because of structural racism, because of so many different types of forms of oppression in this country and around the world, but in the US in particular, a lot of people don't get to even sit at the table to play poker or blackjack. Or if they do, the game is rigged and they never get the chips stacked in front of them. And when it comes to perception, right, you said, people can feel your aura, and I absolutely believe that. I think there are some people, I'll give you an example. My daughter, and this is just one of many, right? My daughter and I went into a coffee shop one time, and there were two police officers that walked in. And these two police officers, they looked like one was white and one looked like Latino. Their race didn't really matter. Their aura felt evil. I mean, evil. Like, not like they were doing some dirty, dirty things. So much so that I like pulled my daughter close to me and we moved to the other side of the room and got out of there as quickly as possible. I've never felt that way about any human beings before in my life. I've never felt like just the incarnation of just evil. So even though here they were, wearing their blues, I could tell they were rotten to the core. Now, the same thing, right, with us as a people, right? Studies show that human beings make a judgment about other human beings within the first 3 to 5 seconds that they lay eyes on them. So you don't even necessarily have a chance to speak, right? Somebody could see from across the room, across the street, they've made a judgment. And we've talked about different things, right? Hair is one thing, clothing is another. If you look like the stereotypical gangbanger, people are going to identify you that way. Whatever you look like, right? It's animal instinct and it's human nature. It's part of our survival instinct to be able to recognize danger when we see it, right? So if something's associated with danger, we're going to respond that way. Unfortunately, as Black men, as Black people in general, but Black men in particular, society has been conditioned to perceive you as a threat, no matter what. You could be in a business suit at a meeting, in a boardroom, and people.
We are a threat.
Say that again.
We are, like, and they know it. They see the God in us when we walk by. You know what I mean? They know who we are, and it goes back to history. That's why I say a lot of Black people don't know our history. They don't know where we come from. They put everything to slavery, and that's where their minds get stuck at. That's why Black people now are sitting around looking for some type of reparation for this small period in your history.
Yeah.
We've been doing this for thousands and thousands of years. We were here before they were anything.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So to understand that they had a time where they was on top, and it was a small time, and they know it's a small time, and they see us getting back to our regular order. You know what I mean? So they try to put on TV all the Black people that are killing each other. But when the majority of Black people are actually excelling, they don't want to tell you that. They don't want to tell you the truth, but it's up for you to go and search it. Stop looking for people to tell you something. Go figure it out. You know, to figure out, we were the first scientists, mathematicians, architects, doctors. We were the first everything.
Yeah.
Have pride in that instead of just thinking that we were once slaves and now we're more than that.
Yeah. It's funny you say that. I went into the rabbit hole of Facebook earlier, and you know, further down the rabbit hole, got into police confrontations with Black men, and there was this older Black man who was being held up in the middle of the street with like 6-7 cops. They shut down and he had a Moor flag hanging out out of his truck window, and he had some paper that he was like, "You have no jurisdiction over me." And they're like, "Sir, do this and do." He's like, "I don't have to listen to you." You know what I'm saying? He was like, "I'm free to travel from here to Timbuktu. You can look up your constitution. You cannot mess with me." And he just broke it down. And the video was funny because I don't know the history. I'm going to keep it 100. I would like to know the history. I'm trying to learn as much as I can. But he had these cops stuck on stupid. They could barely even speak. And they were like, "Well, sir, can you write this? Here's such and such. Can you just sign it?" He was like, "I'm not signing nothing."
Wow.
Like straight to him, and they had the whole street blocked off. There was 6-7 cops, and he just had that flag hanging out of it. He was like, "I'm on more." He was like, "Black people, you need to know your history. They have no jurisdiction over you." He was like, you know what I'm saying? They I forget exactly what he said. He was like, "They swore their oath to us."
Yeah, because the Moors are the ones that brought them everything.
Yes.
Where do you think when they talk about European history, the plague comes from?
Mm-hmm.
Or what was it? Was it smallpox?
Mm-hmm.
All these diseases that are going through Europe, that's because they weren't civilized.
Yeah.
It was the Moors that came from Africa and the Middle East that gave them knowledge, that showed them how to sustain life and gave them cleanliness, showed them what a bath was. You know what I mean? They don't give us credit, but you got to go research. Of course, they're not going to tell it to you because you're going to know exactly what we are. We're not going to make you. No, we are on top of you right now, and we're trying to stay there.
Yeah.
And the more we learn, the more they drop down.
Yeah. So what you're saying basically is, yes, there's discrimination. Yes, there's all these factors that hold us back, but we have the power within us to transcend that. They know we have the power, but instead of focusing on what they're doing to us, it's time for us to come together and ascend past that, right?
Because the thing is, you can't take all. You can't help all because all ain't willing.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like when you think about slavery in a sense, when they said slaves were free, some slaves didn't leave.
Yeah.
They got so used to this life. So you can't teach all.
Yeah.
But the ones that are willing to follow and the ones that are willing to go on this journey, they're going to put themselves out there. They're going to say, "Okay, I'm with you. I see you moving. I'm going to move with you."
Yeah.
And that's what the focus is going to be, where it is now the majority is doing it. Because you think about everything isn't just race. You got bad white people, you got bad Black people, you got bad Chinese people, you got bad Mexicans, bad Puerto Ricans, bad Hawaiian. You got bad all types of people, so it doesn't change.
Yeah. Yeah, we're all the same. Ain't no different. You know what I'm saying? The only real difference is that Black people were the original people. You know what I'm saying? The bringers of knowledge, the bringers of enlightenment. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, if I was trying to stay on top and in control of people, that's the first thing you're gonna do. You're gonna be like, nah, you're stupid. You don't know. You didn't do nothing. We brought you civilization. You know how many white people I've heard tell me that we brought civilization. You guys should be happy you were enslaved because you could have been in Africa. I'm like, oh, come on. And I can't argue with them because they don't want to hear it anyway. So I'm just wasting my time. But it's like,
the white people, the European people who colonized the United States, what's now known as the United States of America, were still so filthy and uncivilized that they actually killed most of the Native American people through disease.
yeah.
You know, you see all those old Western movies and you think everybody was like John Wayne going out there, you know, fighting the Native American First Nations people of this land. No, they killed most people through disease because they were still so unsanitary and so uncivilized. And it's interesting what you said about the Moors too, because the Moors, you know, during that period of time, that's not even going far enough back, to be perfectly honest. And I think about this United States version of, you know, Black Moors and that movement here in the United States. And I love the fact that they have this identity, you know, that stems back to Africa, but it doesn't go back far enough. I mean, we need to talk about the Mali Empire. We need to be talking about pre-dynastic Egypt, right? Where it was just really a sub-Saharan, dark-skinned Black people who actually went into Egypt and created the first pyramids, right? Not the light, not the people who look like you and me, Key, you know? Right? That was many hundreds of years later, many hundreds of years later.
No, I'm right with you. They really need to stop saying that slaves built the pyramids. Like, you know how stupid that sounds? Like, the pyramids are one of the most perfect creations that man has ever created on earth. And you mean to tell me
and
people
still can't be duplicated? Pardon my interjection, but still cannot be duplicated.
Exactly. But the only not just the architecture of the pyramid, but where it's sitting, what it's aligned with. You know what I mean? It's aligned with these constellations. And you mean to tell me people who were beating, like they beat these people into making something this perfect? Doesn't make sense.
No, I mean, if the science behind it, right? The mastery of knowledge of astronomy that went into these pieces of architecture, these masterpieces of architecture, you know, is beyond, it still baffles the greatest minds of this day, right? And there's no way that, you're right, that it was just a bunch of people who, you know, were enslaved to do the work. Now, did they probably have slaves at that time? I'm sure they did. There's, you know, I'm sure it's written in, you know, in the hieroglyphs that we can interpret now. All civilizations have slaves, but I think that while we're on that subject, just a little side note, it's worth saying that slaves were never, not in any period of time, not in any place on the planet that I have ever heard of, have slaves been treated as maliciously, savagely, and inhumanely as during the African American transatlantic slave trade, the way African people were treated by European people. And so slaves even back then had the word had a completely different connotation, right? They were more like indentured servants, which is why in this country now they'll try to like switch it up and say that African slaves in this country were more like indentured servants. No, the hell we were not. No, the hell we were not. That used to exist at another period of time in other geographies, right? Yeah.
They had indentured servants with like the Irish and stuff, right? When they first came over, and they had to deal with nothing like what Black people had to deal with.
No, not at all.
But that's why I say my sense of pride, like, I don't even call myself an African American because I know what America is. You know what I mean? Like, you never heard a person in Canada call themselves an American, which they are.
Yeah.
You never heard anybody in Mexico call themselves an American, which they are.
True.
You never heard nobody in Brazil call themselves an American, which they are. What makes us so great that we can identify with being Americans? And Blake, I consider myself Black. I am just a Black man. And they said, no, Black is a color. No, Black is everything, because everything comes from Black. And I said, I even break it down to something silly. I was like, if you go to the 64 box of crayons and you take every color out of there and you color in the same spot, it's gonna turn black.
It's gonna turn black, yeah.
We are everything.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting, you know, just the idea of what blackness is and what the word and the concept and the color of black mean to different people. I recently had a conversation with a woman who is of my particular faith, but she's not of my ethnicity. And I was discussing a vision that I had. And in this vision, there was something that showed up that was black. And she said, when I first told her about the vision, it kind of gave her pause. And she said she had to think about it and like reinterpret it, you know, in a different way. Because, you know, and I had said to her, when I was explaining my vision, I said, my first instinct was fear. And then it took me a moment to realize that I had been conditioned. This is part of the societal conditioning of growing up in a predominantly white society, European culture, and being taught and raised that black is bad and black is something to fear, right? And actually, when I went back and looked in the Bible and I started looking at the way they were black feathers, right? In this vision, this woman put a cape of black feathers around my shoulders. And when I looked at the black feathers and the raven and how it was used in the Bible, I said, oh, so the raven was the first bird that Noah sent from the ark to see if there was land. And what I read
on send the dove.
What's that?
He didn't send the dove.
No, he did. That was the second bird because the raven didn't come back. And so people have said that that's where the raven kind of got a bad name, and it's been associated with death and fears because it was disobedient because it didn't come back. And I had to think about that. And I said, I know I'm going a little off topic, but I'm gonna bring it back around. But I had to think about that, right? Because first of all, a dove is part of the pigeon family. And pigeons have a homing instinct. So when you send a dove or a pigeon, it will come back because you've trained it that way. It has that instinctively. A raven is a predator. It's a hunter. If it goes out looking for food, it's not going to come back if it finds food, right? Right? It's not going to come back. It found food, right? It's fulfilling its biological imperative and doing what God designed it to do. Now, interestingly enough, later on in the Bible, you know, when the prophet Elijah was on the run and he was out in hiding, Jehovah sent the raven to bring him food and water every morning and night because he didn't have access to even food and water. And the ravens came every day, morning and night, and brought him food and water and kept him alive. So it's just a matter of like where you're looking and how you're interpreting, right? So this is like, this is a biblical reference. It's about a bird and all of that, but it's the same thing with people because in the United States, we know this is a predominantly Christian country. It was founded on Christian principles, right? And most people here are, or at least up until the last time I checked, are Christian. And they have that fear of darkness, that fear of blackness that they translate and they transfer over to everything, including people.
Man, I was listening to a lecture by KRS-One. Matter of fact, it was last week, and we like you say the thought of darkness. You know what I mean? Like everybody has this fear of dying, and he said the thing is that if you can talk to yourself without using your mouth, if you can hear something that happened a while ago without actually hearing it with your ears, if you could see something in your, you know what I mean, that happened a long time ago and not actually have to have these eyes to see it, that means you already have something inside of you that is fulfilling. It's already in you already. So when you talk about like dying, that energy has to go somewhere. You know what I mean? So there's always light. I can't imagine like darkness anymore. You know what I mean? So when people pass away, it's a sad feeling. I do feel it. But I'm wondering, like, I can't imagine, and I know they can't imagine what their next journey is going to be. You know what I mean?
Or
Like,
that they're going to be in darkness, right? I mean, that no one really knows. We assume that they're in darkness. But a couple of other, metaphors, right, from nature. One is that when you grow, right, when you grow any type of plant life, it has to go down in the ground where it is dark in order to develop and grow. All things come from darkness, right? When we are born, we're in the womb where it's completely dark, but that's where life begins. And I tell people this other thing all the time. I think a lot of people don't realize this, or they don't ask themselves this question. But if you're looking from a biblical standpoint, when when Yahweh or Jehovah said, "Let there be light," what did he exist in before he said that?
Mm-hmm.
the world was
Was he
dark
not,
and
if there was
everything.
no light, he must have existed in darkness,
And then you
right?
take it to scientifics, before the Big Bang, right? There was darkness, right?
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
religion and science go hand in hand.
Yeah. Look,
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
I
It
grew up.
wasn't until the Enlightenment period that they tried to separate science and religion.
Yeah, I grew up in the sticks where they didn't have any street lights, up in the forest, up in the hills. So I kind of lived a lot of my life was walking around in dark and on my way home, I'd have to walk up these hills in pitch dark. And I found comfort in that. And I'm not scared of the dark anymore because of that. You know what I'm saying? But the way that they portray that in the society is a trip. I'm quick example of it. A friend of mine wanted me to go to a studio session with him, and he's an Asian guy, right? All he knows a lot of black people, you know what I'm saying? We're going into the middle of the hood, Hunters Point, San Francisco, you know what I'm saying? And he invites me to this, and I'm like, are you sure it's cool if I come? Because I don't know these cats. And he's like, oh yeah, it's cool. You with me, it's all good. And we walk in there, and first thing they do is everyone looks at me. Like, who is this nigga? You know what I'm saying? And he's oblivious to it, what's going on. He's like, oh, you're with me, it's all good. And afterwards, I had to pull him aside and be like, bro, you can't do that. I was like, you can't bring me as an outside black man into this group of people because they're going to perceive me as a threat because that's how society perceives us. And that's how we all perceive each other for the most part. And he was like, no, it's not a big deal. He was like, I'll be out there with you. I'm like, yeah, but you're an Asian guy. They're not looking at you as that guy. You know what I'm saying? It's an automatic, like you say, the 3 seconds they see me, that's the first thing that they're going to think, But I feel bad because I wish it wasn't like that, Because there's so many.
I'm trying to break the perception.
Yeah.
I try to do that. Like, when I see somebody, I do have an initial thought. Mm-hmm. But it still becomes what overrides is they're still human.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, how are you doing? Now, what you project after that is different. You know what I mean? But the initial, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah. I understand. Yeah. That's how I try to do it. But I ain't gonna lie. Like I still, my guard goes up pretty quickly. You know what I'm saying?
I give you a quick situation. I had just moved down here not too long, like during this time, and my nephew was with me, and I took him out. We went out together, and my nephew's younger. He was 21 at the time, 22, and he's gay. You know what I mean? Very flamboyant and everything. And I was like, I'll take you out because he wanted to go out with his friends. I don't want to intrude on your fun. I'm just gonna I'm gonna be there. So we walked in a spot. I don't know how they picked an all black spot in Austin. I didn't even know it existed. You know what I mean? But it was a spot, all black people. I walk in and immediately my guard goes up because where I'm from, if I walk in a spot and it's all black people, I'm looking at my friends like, hey, we're only going to be here for 30 minutes, bro. Like, you know what I mean? Something's going to jump off. Something's going to happen. But I had they had that look. But as time went by and I started seeing the people around, I was like, I'm not there anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm not in that environment anymore. I gotta relax. Like it's okay. Things are fine. They're not those type of people.
Yeah. Like like you said, we all human is what is different. You know what I'm saying? Different environments have different people in it, and you have to be able to judge accordingly. You know.
So you guys, what's coming to mind for me as I listen to you, and I've thought about this many times before, is, we as Black people, we have all had those moments where we're around other people of our race where we're like, yo, I don't know what's up. I got to gauge this situation. And I remember when, what's his name? Jesse Jackson said that, that when he's walking down the street in DC, if a brother comes up behind him, he gets a little nervous, and the entire Black community jumped down his throat and called him a sellout. It's been a lot of years since then, but I think, there are going to be people watching this who are going to be equally upset, right? To say, like, oh, you're a Black man, you're talking about being afraid of other Black men, or you're Black people afraid of other Black people. Y'all don't really, you don't represent the hood, you just don't know, and you're just giving white people more fodder for their racism. But the thing is, like we were saying before, there's good and bad in every, group of people, in every population, whether they are defined by their geography, their race, or whatever. There is good and bad. But what do we say? What do we say to white people when we know, number one, that judging danger by what we see and how people are dressed, how they appear, that is a human thing, right? It is a human reaction. It is our survival instinct. When we know that there are people in our community who are doing dirty because of all the different forces that, drive people to living in the, the underground economy, if you will. So what do we say to white people when they say, I get scared when I see a Black man, I get scared when I see a brother in a hoodie, I get scared, I don't feel comfortable, right? All these people calling the police, because they see a Black person sleeping in the car.
Real talk, like, I'm just gonna keep it all the way 100. I live in a white community right now, and I feel uncomfortable. Walking down the street, I'm scared. I don't know who gonna call the cops. I don't know who gonna have a problem with me. You know what I'm saying? When I was a kid, I used to come play sports in this community and used to be called a nigger on the sideline all the time. So it's not like it's just with Black people. It's like back to the previous point, it's people in general. There's bad people, there's good people, there's in between people. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's really what it comes down to, is we just have to understand that and discern who is what with a little more of an open mind.
And if you want to speak about like fear is just a different type of fear.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, okay, it's not to the extent of robbing. Like I might not look at the white guy and be like, he's gonna rob me, but that don't mean he can't harm me.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, it's just a different type of fear. Like, shit, I get out the car and I hit the lock on the white dude too. Like, hold on, where you? I see it.
That's real.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It don't matter. Like, hey.
Oh yeah, I feel you. And look, me and my brother, we're both half white, and we're both afraid of white people. I'm afraid of white people all the time. And you're right. Like, there was a time where I might think a white person is less likely to, like, try to rob me or harass me or beat me up. Not anymore. Not anymore. They may look at us and be like, oh, they're all crooks, or they're all gangbangers, or they're all whatever they want to label us, and they have their fear. And we may say, oh, we're more afraid that they may call the police on us and accuse us of something we didn't do. That too, but I am very afraid. I just watched a video like a week ago of some white dude assaulting a sister in a parking lot, and she tried to call the police. He slapped the phone out of her hand. And as a natural reaction, out of her own fear, she pushed him. And when she pushed him, he just started like wailing on her, punching her over and over again. That's only one, right? We see this all the time. I was at the NAACP meeting this morning here in Sacramento, and one of the attorneys was talking about a 12-year-old kid who was asking people to buy him food out in front of a Wiener Schnitzel. They called the police. 8 cops showed up. 12-year-old kid threw him on the ground, slammed his face against the ground, handcuffed him. And he didn't go on and tell everything that happened, But he said, talking to his mom, the little kid's mom, she said he's so traumatized he can't sleep, he can't breathe right. He's, all this stuff. So I don't put anything like, in during this era that we live in, I don't put anything past white people. And I don't think that being half white makes me immune. Now, I will say that there is such a thing as half white privilege. I think anytime that you look a little bit more like, the people in power, like white people, European people, they feel more comfortable with you, right? So the more you look like them, talk like them, act like them, the more comfortable they are. And again, I get that. People are comfortable with what's familiar. That's a you know. But for those folks who have an agenda, who want to do harm, right? Who see us all as the enemy, I don't feel like I have any protection whatsoever, particularly as a woman.
I would agree with that. I would agree. It is a lot harder for Black women. I will 100%, because I'm with Kimani. Like I have a natural intimidation factor, and I'm not even a big guy. That's what's funny about it. Like I'm not even a big guy, but when they see me, you know what I mean? But I think it's just a lot of the way I carry myself. I don't carry myself in cower of you.
Yes.
I don't feel inferior. You know what I mean? I know the God in me. I know and you're gonna recognize it too. That's the difference. You're gonna see it too, because that's all that's gonna show. So yeah, you might want to try to hold me back, or you might thought about doing something, but it's not. You can't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're right. I think it is that fear of your greatness, that fear of your personal power, that they fear more than anything, right? It's not that they necessarily think that you're going to try to stick them up, or beat them up. It's that they just see, that greatness in you, and that alone, it can make people really uncomfortable, right? I was having a really great conversation with somebody last night, and he was talking about, how European people, or just white people in general here, are living a lie. They know that they're inferior. They know they weren't the first. They know that they're not supreme. And so that any reminders of that, or any suggestion that Black people will come into their power, knowing that we were the first, knowing all the things that we've accomplished, knowing all the things that we've survived, that's one of their greatest fears.
Yeah.
Like it's funny, like things white people do don't bother me. You know what I mean? Like it used to before, walking down the street and walk past a white lady and she clutch her purse. You know what I mean? That used to bother me. Or they cross the street. I laugh now. It's funny.
Yeah.
It's funny. Like, so when you see a white dude cross the street when we walking down the street, that's funny to me. Yeah. Like I have that power. You know what I mean? I have that. That shows you how scared you are of me. You know what I mean? You ain't afraid that you might be like, oh, Robert. Nah, you really know. It's okay. You can feel it.
Yeah. I want to be really clear too that, on this show, we don't embark in any kind of hate speech, or we don't get involved in any kind of hate speech. We don't want to make blanket statements. And I know we're making a lot of generalizations, but we do that in the spirit, knowing that, again, we're all human beings. There's good and bad. We've said that many times. We don't think all white people are bad. And we certainly don't want to provoke fear, right? We want to live in peace. We had a conversation with another one of my friends recently. My brother and I were talking to my friend Michael, and we started laughing at, like, wow, I've never known a Black person who's just like, oh man, I can't wait till we come into power so we can retaliate, so we can kill white, like you just don't hear that. Like, that's no one I've ever met or talked to or heard of, right? So it's like we're not looking for our moment so that we can oppress others or do harm. But we're just talking about our experience, as Black people moving through, our life journey as we come into a greater awareness of who we are as human beings. Like everybody's born into this world, like sort of a clean slate. We also talked about that, generational trauma, right? That's held on a cellular level and it's passed down generation after generation. So yeah, we do hold, the pain of our ancestors. We do hold the memory of our ancestors, but not just from slavery. We hold the memory of our ancestors going all the way back, to the greatest empire in the world, the Mali Empire, right? One of the greatest empires in the world. And to, back to our ancient Egyptians and our South African, East African, West African brothers and sisters who've all done so many great things. So we all have to come into this world and like come to an understanding of who we are, from so many different identities, our personal, family identity, our birth order identity, our sexual identity, our racial, geographic, like all of these things, right? And then eventually, we hopefully will all come to this point at the top of Maslow's hierarchy of needs of self-actualization, where Malcolm reached, where it's about just being human. And you see yourself in the fullness of your humanity, and it allows you to see the fullness of other people's humanity as well, and you just want to live in peace, right?
Exactly. Like, I don't have anything against any race at all. Like, I don't look at a race like personally, I don't like you, or I don't like, I have friends from all nationalities, backgrounds, and ethnicities, and it's just, you're a good person. Like, I like your energy. Like, it doesn't, I don't care where you come from. I don't care, what background. Are you a good person now? When I talk to you, like, I've had conversations with people who are mad that I'm friends with people who voted for Trump. And I'm like, well, they had their reasons. Like, I can't control who this man votes for. But when I see him on Thursday, we're gonna play an 18 and we're gonna drink some beer and we're gonna chill out and we're gonna talk about it. And that'd be the end of it. Like, I can't, everybody's mind isn't supposed to be on the same page, on the same wave. We are different.
Mm-hmm.
But who are you? That's what I'm more concerned with. Are you really a good person? Do you really have good morals? Do you really have good values? You know what I mean? What do you do when I'm not around? You know what I mean? Because I know it's gonna get back to me. So that's who I want to know. Are you genuine, really?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I know plenty of Black people who supported Trump. You know what I'm saying? So I can't be too bad at it. I don't understand it, but I can't be too bad at it. You know what I'm saying? But I mean, for me and Shauna too, we have it being mixed. You know what I'm saying? We have a different perspective, and both of us have very loving, accepting white family too. Jewish, Spanish, whatever it may be. But like, honestly, I know examples in my life have taught me that most white people have some type of reticence or scariness about Black people, or don't want to have nothing to do with it and just want to stay out of it. That's not our problem. But growing up with my mother and my uncles and my grandfather and my cousins on that side, they all love me just the same as my Black side does. You know what I'm saying? And honestly, I could say I've never seen any racistness out of that side of the family at all. You know what I'm saying? So that's what informed me, knowing that even though the world is also showing me something different, that all white people aren't bad. We already know that. I have white friends who I grew up with who brought me into their households, and they parents let me sleep over and made me part of the family, took me on trips and all that stuff. You know what I'm saying? So definitely not saying that about generalizing about all white people. We just talking about the ruling, the way that the ruling class has set it up. And an unfortunate thing is that most of them are white.
I think we get caught up on just the United States. Like,
yes,
I'm on a mission to just travel. You know what I mean? And I want to go across and actually see the interaction. You know what I mean? I hear it's a lot different. You know what I mean? Like, you see a lot more of us doing things other than this. Like, you're gonna have your racism, yeah, it's gonna happen.
Mm-hmm.
That's just the way things are. You got to deal with it. It's just something you got to play your cards on. Like, all right, he ain't gonna like me. That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to like him to obtain what I need to obtain.
Well,
I don't need to like a person to progress.
yeah.
You know, it's more of a mental thing for me. That's why I said, when I started off, I said the blame. It ain't gonna happen, so why keep blaming?
Yeah. I mean, it's been hundreds of years, and they still looking at us like, "What are you talking about? Why are you tripping?" Like, I mean, how much evidence do you need? You have to have a serious blind eye to still look at black people and be like, "Why are you guys angry?" You know what I'm saying? Like, you have to be in some real serious denial to actually come to that. So what's the point in me arguing? Like I said earlier, what's the point in me arguing with you about it if I'm just wasting my energy? I just have to focus on me and building myself up.
I think eventually, and I'm not gonna say if, when black people start building enough empires, and it's happening.
It's happening.
You know, they don't want to talk about it, but it's happening. You know, especially with the access of information. Like,
Mm-hmm.
the internet is a good and bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it can be the worst thing that ever happened to a person's life, or it could be the greatest source of information that you could ever find. You can get information that ain't supposed to be out. Like, they're not even supposed to put this out, and you can find the real truth. And it's up for you to decipher through what's true and what's not. And you take that information and you build on it. And that's what's been happening. Black people have been building, and we have been building empires. And they say, okay, Atlanta is one form. That's just now. You know, wait till Atlanta becomes Tennessee. You know what I mean? Like Nashville. Wait till Atlanta becomes, you know, Austin. Like, wait till it becomes common in this country, and you will see a shift in power start to happen. We might not see it, but my goal is to build something that is going to move towards that process.
Yeah. That's part of what I love about hip hop. Hip hop is really moving in that direction. You know what I'm saying? We started out having fun, you know, expressing ourselves, and then it got a little dark and gangster in the 80s and 90s. But and you know, it still has that aspect to it, but you see more and more is the building, the creating businesses, becoming entrepreneurs, you buying up the community like Nipsey Hussle was doing. You know what I'm saying? You're seeing more and more of that being promoted in it, and I love that. That's a wonderful thing to me.
You know, another thing about hip hop for me, hip hop has been killing racism. And when they talk about like in the 90s, where they was all against rap music, they hated it. They tried to get it off because what was happening now was Lil Johnny wasn't listening to.
It's a real moment. It's real. Kids will do that.
But no, back to what I was saying. Little Johnny wasn't listening to AC/DC and Metallica, and no, he wanted to listen to Pac and Biggie and Mace and Puffy and all these other people. And so next thing you know, Lil Johnny ain't looking at Megan no more.
Yeah.
Nico across the room got a big booty, and he been watching Sir Mix-a-Lot video over and over. You know what I mean? So next thing you know, when Lil Johnny become the exec of this company, I'm gonna go ahead and hire some flavor in here.
Yeah. You know, rap just surpassed rock and roll as the #1 consumed music type in the United States of America. So
I thought that's been happening.
No, that just happened recently. And at least to my knowledge, maybe I'm wrong, Keith.
Yeah, I think it's happened a while back.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just recently saw a program where they were talking about it, and maybe the program was a little bit older than I realized. But it was interesting. I wish I could remember the dude's name. The young comedian used to be on the Daily Show, the Indian guy. Real tall, thin, handsome, young dude.
He was funny. I forget his name though.
It makes me so mad when I can't remember senior moments in my audience. I'm just gonna blame it on that and get old. But anyway, he did this show on hip hop, and he was talking about how hip hop is being co-opted by political parties around the world. And he talked about Putin, you know, using hip hop and actually like getting behind the turntables and whatnot at a rally, you know, and right. And same thing in Thailand. But the scary thing is that these nationalist right-wing leaders who are trying to oppress their population, they realize how powerful hip hop is as a social force, and they realize how it can be used, you know, for a lot of underground movements, and they fear hip hop, and so their solution is to try to co-opt it, right? And they're making like these really corny, like pop commercial type hip hop tracks and stuff like that to get their message out. But just the fact that they recognize the power of hip hop so much so that they're like, we're going to get in on this game and try to use it, you know, for nefarious reasons, you know, or for, you know, to oppress people, or at least just to stay in power. It really says something, you know, and it says something again to our people. Hip hop, you know, people will say started in the Bronx back in the 70s, but hip hop is part of an oral tradition that goes back thousands of years to our people, right? We always, you know, had this sort of oratory, cultural expression, and, you know, some brothers in the Bronx put it down over some music, but it wasn't anything new. Storytelling, the role of the griot in African society, right? It's thousands of years old. And I think that there's an opportunity for us as a people to reclaim hip hop as the powerful medium that it is, get away from the commercialism of hip hop today in the 21st century, get away from the messages of consumerism and sex and parties, because that's all it is, right? Like you listen to an entire track, all they're talking about.
It's not anymore. Like that's where, like, I'm not a fan of necessarily like the lyrical aspect of hip hop now, but it isn't commercialized no more. Like you don't have to sign with a big company to get noticed and to get recognized and to tour. You know what I mean? Like that's what I said, the internet, like that has been like the greatest invention ever, is that the person, I hear about so many rappers that I've never even heard about because they don't play on the radio. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? But they're touring all over the country. And it's like packed shows and the whole nine. It's like, we don't need them anymore. Yeah. That's where I said you can see the shift that is going on. The only thing that is going to heal everything, and it's a saying that's as old as dirt, is time heals everything. Mm-hmm. And in time, we will go back to being where we was because it's inevitable. They can only go so far. You know what I mean? Because they don't know, they don't grow as fast as we do. You know what I mean? That's just and I'm not just talking about the white race in general. I'm just talking about every other race. We are different. Like we are, but we are the supreme. That's what I feel like a lot of Black people are lacking, is they don't know you are the God of this planet. Use it. That's why I say in time we are pushing for that creative and breakthrough in this society where we're back on top. And that's why I said we might not be able to see it, but it's closer than what we think it is. Yeah. We're talking about 400 years. You can't expect a 400-year anthill, you know, a mountain to be laid smooth in 100 years. It's not going to work like that.
No.
Yeah. Just one more note about underground hip hop. You're absolutely right. There are a lot of hip hop artists who are blowing up just on SoundCloud and YouTube and these other media platforms. They don't need to sign with big record companies anymore. What concerns me is that their message isn't changing. They still have this sort of commercialized, capitalistic mentality of, I'm going to talk about parties, sex, drugs, money, and brands.
Well, I mean, listen, son, like, yes, that's happening. That's always going to happen because people like sex, money, drugs, people in general. That's just bottom line. People enjoy that, especially younger people. But
Yeah.
then you have, who are some of the biggest artists out there right now? You know what I'm saying? First of all, Jay-Z just dropped his project a little while ago, a year or so ago, you know, the 444. We got J. Cole out there. We got Kendrick out there. You know what I'm saying? And neither one of them really conform to that same thing. You know what I'm saying? They might, because they're of the culture, they speak on it a little bit, but they all speak against it and have a higher perception of what it is to be a black man or a person in general. You know what I'm saying? We got Logic. There's a lot of people, probably because you're not so into it, that you don't hear them. But there's a real
Chance the
movement
Rapper.
right now, moving up.
I mean, Chance the Rapper. You got a lot of. I'm a big Drake fan. You know what I mean? Drake make music that's actual music that people go through in their lives. That's what I look, and that's what I see is more relevant now. Like it's weird to see D-boy rap get put down to mixtapes and like internet usage. You know what I mean? Instead of it being the forefront of everything. Like you don't see a Jeezy. The most dope boy you're gonna get, which is commercial as hell, is the Migos.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, like it's taking a back seat to actual music. You know what I mean? And it's pressing and it's transcending. Like it's bringing all races together. You know what I mean? It's crazy to think that they're world. You know what I mean? They're doing world tours.
Yeah. And we've been doing it forever, since the blues, with jazz, you know what I'm saying, with
Yeah, the Chiller
R&B.
went to London.
Yeah, you know.
Nah, man, I appreciate our history. You know what I mean? Not just our history in America, but just the history as Black people. And I see us having an amazing future. You know what I mean? It's just gonna be. It's just time.
Yeah.
That's all I think is the biggest point of it is just time. In time, everything will come forth and come forward. Like it has to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We are the beginning, and for this thing to continue, we're gonna have to get back to running this thing.
Yeah. But a lot of it is, we need to know our, like you said, our history, and it's hard to get that, you know, in the society that we live in. It's, you have to really dig for it. You have to know somebody who knows it, who's willing to give that to you and explain it to you, or put you in a position where you can learn it. Because I'll tell you what, like, I'm 42 years old almost, and you know, I'm just learning now, you know.
You're never too old to learn.
Yeah, never too old
to learn. That's right. And I think a lot of it also is that we have to have an appetite for it. We have to desire it. Like you said, you've got to go after it. It's not going to be handed to you. We're not going to get it in school. You know, you have to seek it out. You have to have a hunger for it. And I would say, we're in the 21st century. We have access to more information now than we've ever had at any other point in history. So I think this is a good time for us to close out our conversation. It's a really positive note. Just saying, hey, it's time for us to reclaim our greatness. It's time for us to reclaim our power. It's time for us to know our history, and so that we know our identity, and we can stand in that power. And that there, between the internet, between the library, between, all the PDF files now that you can get and access, and audio books, it's all available at our fingertips with our smartphones and our tablets and our laptops. So to our studio audience, or to not our studio audience, we don't have a studio. What am I talking about? to our audience, I would say, this is our message to you. Go out there, get the information, get involved, find out your true identity, own your Blackness, own your power, love who you are, and stand in your greatness. And I want to just say thank you again to our guest, Garret Phillips, for sharing your perspective and just spending time with us. We really appreciate you, man.
Thank you. I'm honored. I am. I am really honored. Kimani, it was a pleasure, bro.
Yeah, it was a pleasure, bro.
Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure. We'll be in touch. Kimani will definitely be in touch. I love you, man. And audience, thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again on the next episode of Black Men Speak.